This week on Waterways, environmental artist in South Florida, and manatee tagging and tracking. There are 40 national parks in the United States, each very different in contour, color, and design. But all the parks have something in common: their stunning beauty. National parks will continue to exist only if the people of the United States feel a connection, a sense of stewardship for these unique places. So how do park rangers reach out and engage the people? One way is through the efforts of artists who paint, photograph, sculpt, and create images that attract an audience, sparking a passion to visit and care for these protected environments.
I think the tradition of artists working in national park goes back a long, long time. Back in the 1870s, William Henry Jackson and Thomas Moran, a photographer and a painter, were included in the Hayden expedition that went out to study Yellowstone. Back then, there wasn't the ability to share what these places really look like without artists and photographers. So their work coming back to Washington played a big part in convincing Congress to create Yellowstone as the world's very first national park. And this tradition is something we're trying to continue here at Biscayne today.
In the spirit of the early national parks, Gary initiated the Biscayne National Park Community Artist Program in 2003. This program features artwork displayed in the Biscayne National Park Visitor Center. The work has been as diverse as the surrounding natural environment.
We typically have 4 shows a year here in the gallery. So about every 3 months we swap them out. And we try and get a good variety of artists, of art types, media. We'll have paintings, we'll have photography, we've had sculpture, all kinds of different things.
Artists are drawn to the wilderness of national parks, partly because these environments have remained relatively untouched by mankind. By venturing into these pristine landscapes, visitors are stepping into a past world, a place where they are not necessarily at the top of the food chain. One recognized artist is Brian Call, a photographer who has immersed himself in the conservation causes of South Florida.
I think that's part of what my message is, as far as what I want to say with my nature photography is how do we live with nature rather than pushing it off to the side and you know, killing it off or destroying all this habitat. Is there a way in which we can live with nature rather than, you know, it's always humans or nature, and it's always the humans that are going to win, unfortunately. You know, that is something that is not good, you know, for our environment, and ultimately it's not good for us.
Brian Call and Ranger Gary Bremen are finding the same results as the early national park artists of the 19th century. The artwork is attracting new support for the national parks in South Florida.
I think one of the great impacts of having gallery shows here at the park is the number of people who come here and literally say they never knew this place was here. They discover Biscayne National Park because their best friend's cousin Susie is the artist and they came out to support her. And you know, that's a great thing for people to be able to figure out something that they didn't even know existed before.
These images, painted by Carrie Chen, provide a glimpse into the realms of Biscayne National Park marine ecosystems. The bonefish, the permit, the sharks, the redfish. For anyone who has never witnessed these fish firsthand, paintings are the next best thing. One of the most popular exhibits featured at Biscayne National Park were the sculptures by Tom Bintz, aka Captain Honk.
And what he does is he goes out and collects flotsam and jetsam debris from shorelines in his travels all over the world. He might pick up old flip-flops or dock foam or bottle caps, and then he turns them into sculptures of fish that have a bit of whimsy to them, but not enough that you don't know what the fish is. They are very specific. You can tell what species the fish are, and those were really amazing sculptures.
I think the United States is pretty slack in recycling. You know, I grew up near Canada, and Canada's been recycling bottles and cans for 50 years, I guess. And the United States just now got on the bandwagon. I think Florida's one of the worst states for waste.
Almost everyone who sees Captain Honk's work learns about the inhabitants of Biscayne National Park simply by identifying the species represented in the recycled rubbish. By recreating the images seen in national parks, artists strike a connection between humans and their natural surroundings. Artists can trigger waves of support from the surrounding public. And the more beautiful the art, the more people inspired.
The parks are very special in South Florida because of their color. The colors in South Florida are very intense. The French painted in the south of France for the same reason, and the colors here are even more vivid, I think.
Patricia Ratino Cummins, a painter who works in oils and pastels, spends many days each year in state and national parks. For Biscayne National Park, she painted a series of works depicting native plants called Biscayne Botanicals. The people that see her work are often moved to see the real plant in its natural environment. Sometimes the beauty of her art creates an emotional catharsis in the viewer, in a way that news articles and outreach mailers cannot. One of the most critical aspects of an artist's work can be the documentation of the changes that these environments are going through. A picture is worth 1,000 words, and when ugly images are shared, like pollution or dead animals, their impact is undeniable.
Visual impact is the thing that can really get that spark in somebody to want to investigate further. And I think that's what I see my role as a photographer is. Not only to show the beauty of what we're doing, but to show some of the things that isn't so beautiful of what we're doing, and maybe that will help inspire them to get more involved.
When Brian is not in the Everglades or Biscayne National Park, he is showing his art at festivals around Florida. With each show, at each festival, crowds stop at his booth, engaging with this visual candy. Some ask questions, some just stare.
If I can play a small role in getting people to really see our beautiful nature, then hopefully that will inspire them to get more involved in the protection of our wilderness areas here in South Florida.
Many national parks throughout the United States have an Artist in Residence program, in which an artist lives at the park for a week or two, creating art the entire time. They do it in front of the public and answer questions, and they typically leave a piece of art with the national park as a legacy, a testament to the environments they experienced. And hopefully, the awe-inspiring subjects of their artwork will still be around in the future to see firsthand. Dry Tortugas National Park, known for historic Fort Jefferson and world-class diving and fishing. People from all around the world visit the Dry Tortugas. Scientific data indicates that the area is in trouble. On January 19, 2007, a research natural area was created, setting aside 46% of the park as a no-take and eventually a no-anchoring zone. People are still allowed, but fishing is prohibited in the research natural area. Visit the web for more information on the research natural area. The sea cow. No nickname so encapsulates an animal's personality. For the West Indian manatee, a marine mammal found in Florida, the title sea cow describes its size, its speed, and its mellow demeanor. The manatee has no natural defense against predators, but yet it evolved and thrived for 30 to 50 million years in the West Indies. That is, until Europeans arrived on the scene. In 1967, manatees were placed on the endangered species list. Since that time, through a variety of conservation efforts, the manatee has made a comeback. Today, an estimated 3,000 manatees swim in Florida's waterways, and wildlife officials are considering downgrading the manatee from endangered to threatened. But what standards are applied to animals when considering removal from the list? With the rapid changes in the environment and the increased expansion of the human inhabitants of South Florida, is this recovery temporary? James Reed, a biologist with the United States Geological Survey, has been recruited by Everglades National Park to help answer this question. His study, the Serenia Project, named for their order, Serenia is providing scientific data so resource managers can make informed decisions.
So the Serenia Project started in the mid-70s doing research on manatees, and a lot of that was focused on population assessment and continues to be so. We're also doing work with genetics, habitat assessment, and how manatees utilize habitats. And in particular, the radio tracking program has covered a lot of areas of Florida. Now we're working in the Everglades trying to address some of the concerns of what manatees are doing and their status in the Everglades.
James Reed's primary area of study has mostly been in hydrology, the scientific study of the properties, distribution, and effects of water on the Earth's surface. Reed has been analyzing water flows through the Florida ecosystem, how this flow changes between seasons. This led him to his work with manatees, and how water flow and temperature affect manatees' migration. The connection between water flow, temperature, and manatee populations makes Reed uniquely suited to track manatees as he monitors hydrological conditions. Everglades National Park hosts a large population of manatees. Because the park is responsible for protecting the ecosystem, and because the manatee is still threatened, managers at the National Park Service turn to the U.S. Geological Survey's Serenia Project for a model of what can be done to maintain healthy manatee populations.
I'm going to tell you a little bit about the tagging system that we use on manatees. It starts with the manatee belt. This is a belt that we custom designed. We make it ourselves. It goes on the peduncle region of a manatee, which is the area where the tail joins the body. It's like the manatee waistline. So this goes around that area, and we cinch that down. And then to the belt, we have a 4-foot nylon tether that one end connects to the belt, and at the other end is the transmitter. Built into this system on the belt, there is a weak link so that It's a corrodable weak link, so that over time, if the animal outgrows the belt, or when the belt wears out, it will corrode and fall off the animal. There's also a weak link built into the tether, so that if the tag gets stuck or caught on anything and pulls, the weak link on the tether will break, so the tag and tether float free, the belt stays on the manatee, and we have the possibility of re-tagging that animal.
Because the South Florida ecosystems are being totally replumbed through the comprehensive Everglades restoration plan, because manatees to this day are inadvertently killed by powerboats, and because the reproductive rate for manatees is slow, they need constant protection and surveillance to allow their numbers to grow and permanently stabilize.
Photo identification of individual manatees is still a principal tool for understanding population dynamics. At a population level, you need to use tools such as the photo ID effort or aerial surveys in order to look over an entire population. Yeah, the photo ID effort has been ongoing since this project has been established, and some of our records go back even longer of individual scarred manatees. Kathy Beck is the principal person in charge of that. She has about 2,100 individuals known within the catalog.
This morning when I got up, it was bloody cold out, so I got to my computer and downloaded a location for a tagged animal that we have in the area of Crystal River. Temperatures are at about 32, 34 degrees, and they say the wind chill is going to make it feel like it's in the teens. We just pulled up in the boat, and the tag is sitting right outside of Three Sisters Springs, so we'll go take a look at him also.
The best way to identify a manatee is by the scar pattern, produced by boat propellers on its tail and body. Like thumbprints, no two are alike. The fact that scientists can count on almost every manatee to be scarred illustrates the immense increase in near-shore boat traffic and its impact on the animals. In areas like Central Florida's Crystal River, manatee zones can be found in every community with a canal. These areas are restricted to all non-resident boaters. After an 8-hour drive from his office in Gainesville, Reed and his team rest for the night in Homestead. At 5 a.m., the team checks their equipment and re-secures their boats. It's a 1-hour drive to Flamingo in Everglades National Park. And by daybreak, everyone, including National Park support staff, has arrived at the launch point.
2 or 3 times a year we're conducting captures in the Everglades. The rest of the time we're either up here analyzing data or monthly field trips along with the park to radio track the animals. We wouldn't be able to do this project if we didn't have the full cooperation of the park. And truly the folks down there are providing a great deal of logistic support and functional support. So Sonny Bass, Skip Snow, Lori Oberhofer, and Mario Alvarado are the principal people that we're working with when we're down there. Likewise, we're working closely with the state when we're conducting capture operations, 10,000 Islands National Wildlife Refuge staff, Big Cypress staff, so truly it's an integrated approach to doing this kind of work.
The reproductive rate for manatees is very slow. Female manatees become sexually mature at 5 years old, with males reaching sexual maturity at about 9. On average, one calf is born every 2 to 5 years. The pregnancy lasts 1 year, and babies are dependent on their mothers for 1 to 2 years. The West Indian manatee lives a largely solitary existence. Because they have never known natural predators, they never developed a herding system for protection. The only stable group within the manatee population is that of a mother and her calf. It is believed manatees can live 60 years or more, and most manatee mortalities are human-related.
One of the big efforts we did initially was radio tracking in Fort Myers. From Fort Myers, we then went to the Atlantic coast and conducted radio tracking of manatees there for about 10 years. In 2000, we started our research in the Everglades. Our first effort in the Everglades was radio tagging manatees in the 10,000 Islands, essentially the northern portion of Everglades Park, and looking at movements in that area. Now we're shifting and working more into the southern Everglades to better fill out the data set of animal use within the entire greater Everglades region. So one of the tools that we're using now is a GPS integrated satellite transmitter. This tag is able to record GPS locations and then send those through a satellite link that we can download remotely. So now we have high resolution locations and frequent location fixes, so we can do detailed tracking of manatees as they use these habitats. As you know, the Everglades is a pretty remote area and logistically difficult to do field work, so having this remote capability of monitoring individual movements and travel corridors and use areas is about the only way we could be doing this. We use a number of experienced manatee handlers, experienced capture personnel, and veterinarians on staff. It would be great if we could get radio tags on manatees and assess their health without capturing, but this is the best technique that's been developed in order to do this. Manatees are powerful animals, and so they don't like to come out of the water. So in the net there is a struggle, but once they're on board, they pretty much will relax and let us do the operations, the tagging and the health assessments that we need to. In one regard, manatees are very amenable to handling, in that they are fairly calm once they're restrained and allow us to do this kind of work. We have people that are monitoring heart rate and respiration, temperature during the entire handling operation. The blood work that's collected is run for a panel of animal health, as well as a number of different research interests on blood metabolites and other measures of animal health. We're lucky to have an experienced staff that come down for the captures, and we really need that, where people are experienced with handling the nets, handling the animals, and collecting information from the individuals.
In 2005, there were a reported 80 manatees killed by boats out of a total of 396 deaths that year. Boat ownership has continued to boom in Florida, hitting an all-time high in 2005 of more than 975,000 registered watercraft. The continued survival of manatees can be viewed as a success story for projects like Serenia, and as an argument for the effectiveness of protective laws such as the Marine Mammal Protection Act and the Endangered Species Act. The question becomes, is the recovery of a species permanent? If managers remove the manatee from the endangered species list, will its numbers once again plummet? If so, how much effort will be needed to restore its listing? As manatee populations grow, so does the number of boaters. More manatees are thrust into competition with humans over a finite geographic space. For Everglades resource managers, decisions that affect the fate of manatees will ultimately rest on the data collected by scientists like James Reed and his colleagues at the Serenia Project.